Welcome to Middle Math Academy, Converting Fractions, Decimals, and Percents, level number 2. If you're looking for any more practice on converting fractions, decimals, and percents, please feel free to check out level number 1 or levels 3 through 5. Our learning target today is I can convert fractions, decimals, and percents. Go ahead and pause the video and rate yourself before the lesson. How confident do you feel in our learning target? 1 is the lowest amount of confidence. 5 is the highest amount of confidence. At the end of the lesson, we'll come back and rate ourselves again. Once you've rated yourself on our learning target, pause the video and complete our opening problem. As a reminder, this video is not going to go over every single problem. There will be times where you are going to independently practice, so please make sure to follow along with the examples and write down what I'm writing. Let's take a look at our notes. So, like our learning target mentioned, we're converting fractions, decimals, and percents. So to convert fractions to decimals, we are going to divide our numerator by our denominator. In other words, 3 divided by 5. When I do 3 divided by 5, I get 0.6 as my decimal. Let's write that in. Now, another way to say this is 6/10. The first number to the right of the decimal is the tens place. All right, so we divided to get our fraction to our decimal. Next up, we're going to go from our decimal to our percent. Now, one way to do this is we can multiply our decimal by 100. So I can do 6/10 times 100, and 0.6 times 100 is 60%. Another way to think about this is when we multiply by 100, we're actually moving our place value forward 2 spots. Okay, and then in this empty spot would be a 0. So you can either move your decimal forward 2 spots or multiply your decimal by 100. All right, so we divided our fraction to get our decimal, and then we multiplied our decimal by 100 to get our percent. Now we're going to go the reverse direction, and we're going to go from our percent to our decimal. So to convert from a percent to a decimal, we're going to divide our percent by 100. And just a key point is percents are always out of 100. So I'm going to do 2 divided by 100, which kind of makes sense because we are multiplying to get our percent. So to go the other way, we'll do the inverse of multiplication, which is division. So when I do 2 divided by 100, I get 2 hundredths or 0.02. Make sure to not click that percent sign if you're using a calculator. So we're going to go ahead and write that in, 0.02. So like I mentioned before, the first number to the right of the decimal is a tens place. So we have a 0 in the tens place here. The second number to the right is the hundredths place. Okay, now that comes into play when we're converting from a decimal to a fraction because we are going to use place value to write the fraction. Okay, so if we have 2 hundredths, I can write that as 2 over 100. If we wanted to simplify, we could, and we could divide both of these by 2 and get 1/50th. Both are equivalent. So if this isn't quite clicking just yet, don't stress out. We're going to practice some more. Let's take a look at example A and B. And when I said example A and B, I really meant example 1 and 2. Example 1 says, write each decimal in words. Use the place value chart if you need help. So at the bottom here, we have a place value chart that's helpful when we're converting decimals to fractions or writing decimals written in words. So make sure you're using a pencil. For our first number right here, we have 0.03. So I can see that this 3 is in the hundreds place. So the way I would write this in words is 3 hundredths. Pause the video, write this down. And now we can, I see that this is also 300, so we might as well just write it as a fraction, 3 hundredths. Let's take a look at our next one. Okay, I want you to write in words, how do you think we would write 0.56 in words using our place value chart? Well, for this one, okay, so you could erase the last one, 0.03. I just wrote in 0.56. The way we would say this is 56 hundredths. Pause the video, make sure you have this down. And then for this last example, the way we would write this, okay, so I can see now we have numbers to the left of our decimal. So in my place value chart, I'm going to write 10 to the left of my decimal and then 22. And then the way we could write this in words is 10 and 22 hundredths. Okay, so whenever there are numbers to the left of the decimal, you say and before you say the numbers on the right. Pause the video, make sure you have this down. Once you have this down, I want you to pause again and then use your notes at the top to fill in this chart. All right, let's go over our answers for example 2. Okay, so we already filled in 3 hundredths for our fraction. To go from a decimal to a percent, we can multiply by 100, and you should have gotten 3%. All right, our next row, we have 4/5. Okay, so we're going to do 4 divided by 5. 4 divided by 5 is 8/10. Okay, and when I multiply my decimal by 100, or remember you can move your decimal over 2 spots to the right, I get 80%. And then our last one, to go from a percent to a decimal, okay, well, there's a lot of different ways. Number one, you could divide by 100 and get 35 hundredths. You could move the decimal 2 spots to the left. Or you could remember that percents are always out of 100. So we could write it like this, 35 hundredths. Once you have this down, go ahead and flip to page 2. Let's take a look at page 2. Problem A says percents are always out of 100. Remember, that's the highest score you can get on a test or a quiz, unless there's extra credit, of course. And so it says there are 100 squares to the right. How many are shaded? So I can see that there are 10 boxes in each row and 10 boxes in each column. Go ahead and count how many squares there are. Pause the video, then come back. I can see that we have 10, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25 squares shaded. So if I want to write this as a fraction, I can write it as 25 over 100. As a decimal, I could write it as 25 hundredths. And then as a percent, I can multiply this by 100 or move my decimal over 2 places to the right and get 25%. So how would we write the decimal in words? Well, I know the second number to the right of the decimal is the hundredths place. Remember, flip back to page 1 if that's helpful, the place value chart. And we can write 25 hundredths. Pause the video if you need more time. Then, on your own, complete problem B. Come back to the video once you're done with problem B. Okay, this video will not go over problem B, but I do want to complete problem C together. So why don't we pause the video, try problem C on your own, and then come back once you're done. Okay, so I know that each one of our grids has 100 squares. So if this entire grid is filled in, that means that's one whole. Okay, so whatever our fraction is, it's going to be 1 and then our fraction. Our decimal will be 1 and then our decimal. So let's figure out what our fraction is going to be. We have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. So the way I can represent that is 50 are shaded out of 100. Okay, and then we have 50 hundredths. Could also just write this as 5 tenths, right? It's 5 rows of 10 in this grid. And then as a percent, we can either multiply 1.50 times 100 or just simply move our decimal 2 spaces to the right and we get 150%. So whenever we have more than one whole, then the percent is going to be more than 100%. Pause the video and answer this question. Come back to the video when you're ready for page number 3. All right, so now you're going to complete page number 3 on your own independently, and then come back to the video once you're done. So once you finish page 3, come on back to the video. Go ahead and complete all of page 4. Remember, you have notes on page 1 to help you. So if you get stuck, go back to the first page, look at your notes, look at our examples, and those should help. Once you finish all of page 4, come back to the video. Go ahead and pause the video. Check your work for the top of page 4. Pause the video and check your work for the bottom of page 4. You can see here that in problem A, we shaded 50 out of 100 boxes to represent 50% or half. And then in problem B, we shaded 5 out of 100 to represent 5 hundredths. Pause the video if you need more time. All right, on page number 5, I want you to complete the first 3 rows on your own. Then once you're done, come back to the video to check your work. All right, so for our first problem, our decimal is already filled in. And I know the way we could use place value to say this out loud is 2 hundredths. So I'm going to go ahead and write in my fraction. And then to go from a decimal to a percent, I can either move my decimal forward 2 spaces to the right or multiply it by 100, and we get 2%. All right, so now on this next one, we have our fraction filled in. So I'm going to do 7 divided by 8. And 7 divided by 8 is 875 thousandths. When I multiply that by 100, I get 87.5%. On this third one, we have 20% already filled in. I know percents are always out of 100, so I can write this as 20 hundredths, or I can do 20 divided by 100 and get 20 hundredths. Go ahead and complete the rest of page 5. Come back when you're ready for page 6. All right, on page 6, go ahead and pause the video, complete all of page 6, and then come back to the video once you finish. Let's go over our common misconception problem. It says, Kayla said that 2/8 as a decimal can be written as 2.8. John said 2/8 as a decimal is 0.25. Who is correct? Explain how you convert fractions to decimals. All right, let's take a look at the answer here. This is a very common mistake I see from students. John is correct. 2 divided by 8 equals 0.25. When you convert fractions to decimals, divide your numerator and denominator. So go ahead and pause the video and check your work here. To wrap up today's lesson, make sure that you answer our 3 debrief questions. In your own words, what did you learn today? Sometimes it helps to look at our learning targets from page 1. How much effort did you put in? Rate yourself 1 through 5, 1 being the lowest and 5 being the highest. Explain. And what do you think is a common misconception a student might make when converting fractions, decimals, and percentages? Once you've answered these 3 questions, we're going to flip back to page 1 and rate ourselves after the lesson for the learning target. So if you flip back to page 1, as a reminder, our learning target is I can convert fractions, decimals, and percents. You already rated yourself 1 through 5 at the beginning of the lesson before we had a lot of practice. Now that you've gotten more practice, I want you to rate yourself again. 1 is the lowest, 5 is the highest. How confident do you feel? And thank you for joining us today at Middle Math Academy. If you're looking for any more converting fractions, decimals, and percent practice, remember we have 5 levels of challenge, and each level comes with a video and a lesson. So feel free to check them out, and I hope you have a great day.